Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a while since the last video. I just looked at the dates this morning and I believe the last series of videos I did on the 67 GTO here, we were just getting ready to weld the panels on. Yes, it has taken this long to get back to this car. I am blessed to be busy, but that means everybody gets equal parts of me. So I had to walk away from the GTO for a while, had to work on other projects in the shop. Now we're back on this for a little while. What we're going to be doing next, as you can see, all the panels are welded on as far as where we left off on the last video. And those of you who have been following probably noticed there's a different color trunk lid on here. And that's because the one that was on the car, we found just way too much rust in the back. It would have been super expensive to fix. We were able to locate another 67 GTO trunk lid, and these are 1 year only trunk lids. They are very difficult to find. It took a long time to find one that wasn't rotted away. So luckily we got one, we got it on the car. It's gonna need a little bit of work, but we should be able to use this way better than the other one. It should cost a lot less money to fix this one. But unfortunately, we have also uncovered more problems. I know where we left off was with the quarters getting welded on, and during this project we had discussed that we're going to be putting a full floor pan in it. Well, upon cleaning and prepping the area inside the car, I found that we have rust on the rockers. We will be replacing the rocker panels, and I also found extensive rust on the lower A-pillar, would be the kick panel area on both sides of the car where the floor vent would be. Really rusted bad from a leaky windshield. Little tip for you, when you get a leaky windshield, you need to fix it. You can't let it go, because this one was let go. And I'll grab the camera here before we're done and I'll go inside the car and show you some of the stuff, but uncovered a lot more stuff. So that snowball, it just keeps going, and this is going to be a monster budget-wise. It's going to be a beautiful car when it's done, but this is not going to be cheap. But as I said, where we left off, we were putting the panels on, getting ready to weld them. Everything back here is all welded up. I'm happy with it all. Back window fits in real nice. Window molding fits in real nice. The trunk here fits really well to the replacement quarter panels. Don't recall if I mentioned it before, but sometimes you have problems with the gaps here. And I do have some notations. There's going to be a little bit on both sides, a little bit of filler, tiny bit of filler work we're going to have to do just to get that gap nice and even. But impressed, I am seriously impressed with these replacement quarter panels, that they lined up as nice as they did. The back window filler, all of that, everything came out good. What we'll go over here is I'll try to explain real quick the bracing we're going to need to do inside the car, and this is super critical. The inside of this car, just as I explained back here, the inside of this car is going to have to be braced left to right, diagonal, up and down, all over the place, because once I cut that floor out, what happens is the car wants to spring open now between the A-pillar and the rear door jamb. Right now they're sitting like this. You cut the floor out, this car could end up doing this, and if you weld your new floor pan in like that, nothing's ever going to line up. So lots of bracing is going to have to go in this car. I know I'm a broken record. Time is money, there's hours, it just translates into dollars, but it has to be done. We're this far along in the car, there's no sense in half-assing repairs on the rest of the car. I uncovered rust, I uncovered a lot of rust, it's getting fixed. I also am going to be replacing the door skins. When I tore the doors apart, I don't have a video on that, but I put the doors on the horses, and as I was tearing the doors down, getting all the glass and everything, as I was pulling off the weather stripping, I actually pulled steel with the weather stripping. So the door, the inner structure of the door around the weather strip literally just started to fall apart. So we were able to source another set of doors that are in way better shape, but they do need skins. So I'm going to be replacing the skins. I have them in the shop over that way. We did look into purchasing the new door shells that they have, but I do believe I mentioned it before. not real impressed with the quality of the doors yet. They are a thinner gauge, which means they're lighter. They don't fit the greatest, and you got to tweak them a lot. By buying the skin, it gives me the ability to manipulate that skin on the inner structure to make it line up with the car. Just as you saw in the other videos with the wheelhouse not lining up with the quarter, the factory that assembles these new doors, they're just going to squeeze them around. Sometimes they don't even weld them, they just pinch them together and that's it. They use glue, but that's it. They don't really go by anything, and then you go to put them on the car, the back doesn't line up, or the rocker panel gap is horrendous, or it's at an angle, it's going up or it's going down, and then you find you have to tweak the whole thing. So I think it's better off just to use the other doors we have for their inner structure, put the new skins on it, we'll get all that to line up, but we've got to get the bottom of this fixed before we can ever put that back on. So just as I left the doors on to do the back of the car, now we know we have everything back here where we want it. Then you can take the doors off to do the front of the car. But before you cut anything out, you got to brace it, as I mentioned. I'm going to show you some of the parts that I had to buy to fix these rusted areas, and you can kind of see the dollar signs when I start going inside there. So give me a second, I'm going to grab the camera, we'll go inside the car. So as we come around the car here, you can see I have the doors off. Now what I found was, as I was cleaning the rockers here in preparation to separate the floor, if you look all through here, and as we go all the way down the rocker, the metal got real thin. When I started knocking away the paint that was on here, I uncovered the rust, and that made the metal so super thin that I just didn't feel comfortable with trying to piece this together. So we got brand new rocker panels. This is the new rust we found, and this is pretty extensive. We knew we needed toe boards, but if we come around to here, and I'll set the light down, there is the kick panel area that I mentioned. And if you look in here, this metal is just totally gone. Everything in here is completely rotted. This is rotted. You can see the trail of rust coming down from the dash. You can see the water trails. Okay, you see all that? That goes down and it sat behind here. And the other thing we had behind these kick panels, and the other side, there's some parts in the way, but the other side is no different. What we had behind here is exactly what we had in the back corners. And there's a little bit of it sticking out right there. I left it in there to show you guys. There it is again. You can see the seat stuffing. And that is from the mice. So that stuffing gets loaded with urine and crap and everything else. And every time it gets damp, it's like battery acid. Well, that is what was sitting back in this area and back in behind here. If you look it down inside there. Look at all the compromised metal inside this thing. This was packed full of seat foam inside here, just like you see there. And that's what rotted this away. I mean, the window leak up at the top corner here, and this is what did it. They leak up here, and you can see this has holes up here that have to get fixed. Well, that leak, the water ran down and got inside here. Well, with all that stuffing in there and all that mouse piss, it is just rot waiting to happen. So I have to replace all of this, both sides. I've got panels over here. You can see there's one of the kick panels, brand new. There's toe boards. Those are inner braces. That is an inner brace that's behind this kick panel. So there is a lot of extra work. I'm not sure if you can see the other side. I won't go over there. It's the same story on that side. So one of the little things I always tell people, you got to be careful how you store your car. If you're not keeping track of the mice, they're going to get in your car and they're going to do this to it. And this is going to be expensive. There's no doubt about it. But what I'll be doing is I'll be putting some bracing, more bracing in. This is the bracing back here from when we did the rear repair. Well, now you can see I have a cross brace right at the rear door jamb. So I X-brace that. I will make similar braces up front to go across, And then I will put door beams in to go across the door opening. So it'll kind of go diagonal. I'll use my light. It'll go diagonally across the door beam, of the door opening, and it'll tie the front and back together so that way nothing moves. Because once I cut this floor out, this car is going to want to move all over the place, and we don't want that happening. I'm also going to make, you can call them go, no-go gauges. I'll take a ton of measurements. Like I say, take a ton of measurements, but I'm also going to make some gauges of steel up in key points from the transmission tunnel up to the roof. We'll tear this headliner out, and there's bracing underneath there. And I'll take some measurements from the tunnel up to the roof in several different locations. And the reason I'm doing that is one of the other problems you run into when you're doing a floor is you put the new panel in and you don't really know if that panel is set right, or stamped right. So a lot of times people, what they do is they just go ahead, slap the thing in, slap the car together, and before you know it, well, the seat doesn't fit, or the seat's too high, or the hump, basically the transmission tunnel is too high or too low. If it's too low, the transmission's hitting the transmission tunnel. I had a customer recently that had that happen on a Chevelle, and it turned out that the floor was installed incorrectly, and it was too low in the center, so they had to push the floor up just so he could get his transmission in. So we're going to take some measurements of this floor, lots of measurements, notebook. Keep a notebook of everything. As I said, I'll make some gauges like I did in the back window opening here that go from the floor to the roof. And that way, I know when I put the new pan in, I need to be as close to those marks as possible. That way, when I drop it back down on the chassis, the engine and trans, which are sitting in the car, again, this is a finished chassis, will go right in. This car will drop right over. One key thing to note here, and this is very important to anybody doing a floor pan. You need to verify that your floor pan lines up. You remember the problem we had back in here where I had to move that brace that was under there because I couldn't get the body mount to line up. Well, the same thing holds true for the floor. There's all sorts of body mounts that go on these floor pans. What you need to do is you need to verify by placing the new floor pan on the chassis with the body mounts that everything is in the right spot. We're going to walk over to it here. I'm going to show you the floor pan. As I'm saying, lay that on that chassis. Make sure everything lines up with the body mounts. I have seen it to where, just like on that trunk, they don't line up at all, and a lot of stuff has to be moved. There's the floor pan there. There's a 57 Bel Air. I'm hopefully going to make a series of videos on. I'm actually building a whole new car. But there's the floor pan. And I need to make sure that all the body mounts line up. If they do not line up, I have to make them line up because we're not moving the chassis. We have to move everything on the floor just like we did on the trunk. But getting back to what I said, I have seen it to where people have put entire cars together, assuming that the floor pan was right. Hey, just slap this thing in here. Perfect, great, it's in. They body work it, paint it, they do everything. They're ready to put this car together, final assembly. They go to drop it on the chassis, and it doesn't fit. And it doesn't fit because they didn't do that step in the beginning. So do yourselves a favor. Lay that pan on the chassis, make sure everything lines up, make sure all your bolts work, and that's what I'm going to do here. Hopefully we find no more rust after we're done with this round of repairs, and then we can get on to body work and paint and get this back to the customer. So, as always, like, subscribe, questions, comments, anything. Stay tuned. There's more to come. See you guys.